Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for today. Today, we're talking to Osman Mah about how to become a leader in a new culture and country. With a lot of people moving for work, this is a really important episode. Osman's done it in a really amazing way and has such an amazing philosophy about it. Enjoy and have a magical week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. As you can see, this week we've got a guest, which is really exciting, and we'll get to them shortly. But first, let's check in with the team and see how they're going. So, Danette, how's your week been?
My week's been awesome, Jez. A little bit of traveling, and then the last couple of days at home by myself, because those of you who are regulars would notice that Graham isn't on today, and that's because he's taking a week off down the coast in a little cabin between two big projects. So he's there and he's got his own time, and I've got my own time at home with the girls. And Osman, just so you know, the girls are the chickens and the guinea fowls that we have.
Nice.
Nice one. That's awesome. Good stuff, Danette. Leggers, how are you going this week?
Yeah, pretty good. I feel like the weather's taken a nice turn to become a bit warmer, which I'm very thankful for. I did lose my USB this week at uni, but I got a message that it has been found. So I get to pick that up, which is great. And also Jez and I and Kanika and a group of people went to go see the Meg 2 this week, which was a very silly movie, but quite fun. Had lots of action, lots of ridiculous CGI. So it was good fun, but overall it's been a good week.
I haven't heard a story about a USB in probably 10 years, Leggers, so glad that you got that sorted.
I mean, I'm still in school, bro. Gotta take my little USB in.
Yeah.
Amazing. And Osman, how's your week been?
It's good, Jess. It's been quite busy, but thoroughly enjoyable. Talking about school and that my eldest son Tariq is going through his HSC, so that's a bit of a pressure point on the family front. And his computer stopped working on Monday, so I had to go fix it up. He just had an external hard drive connected, so it was trying to boot off that. So it wasn't a big drama, so that was good. And also I kicked off a few programs this week, a few classes, so that got me really busy, but it was thoroughly enjoyable, those programs. It went really well, so quite excited about it. And not last but not least, I managed to kick off my book writing again, because I put it aside while one of my big program was going on, so I just didn't have time, but managed to get back into the swing, and now working with a book coach, so I've got an accountability partner. So yes, this is gonna get out very soon.
I'm just going to say, woohoo, Osman.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing, Osman. When it's coming out, we'll have you back on, and we can do a full special special podcast on that. That would be amazing.
I'd love to give you a date, but I haven't got my first session with my book coach. So she said we'll get the date after the first session. So she's already getting me to accountable. So I'll share that with you once I figure that out. But it should be sometime next year. That's what I'm looking at.
Great. Well, that's really exciting. Well, I think this is a great place to start, Osman. So, Osman, obviously now you've got a book going, but beyond that, for people that may be being introduced to you for the first time, do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so the usual introduction that I give to people who I haven't come across yet is that I use an acronym ABCM. So usually when I was sort of settling into Australia, there was this popular term called ABC. So that's usually refers to Australian-born Chinese, right? So ABC, it comes from American-born Chinese. So it's come from America. But that's not my version because I wasn't born here. I came to Australia from Burma or Myanmar. So Burma, so that's the B in there. And C actually stands from Chinese because I've got a full-on Chinese lineage. So we were like probably third or fourth generation coming from China into Burma. And A stands for Australia because I've been here for far too long. So even though I can't say good day, mate, full on, I'm almost there. So I am Australian. And M stands for, if you want to guess, Allegra, M stands for just one go.
Myanmar?
No,
Malaysia?
that's Burma. No, actually, M stands for Muslim because I'm a practicing Muslim as well. So not many people get that right, so don't worry about it. So that's my personal background, and that actually, the way I take time to introduce that way is because that actually what I do now as well. So dealing with different culture, you can see I kind of sit in intersection of 4 different culture. Those ABCM. And that kind of put me in a good position to understand differences, nuances between these cultures and see how people can flourish fully no matter where they are, right? No matter what their background is. So that's exactly what I do as a profession for my profession these days. But I had an engineering background, so I started as a software engineer and then moved into project management, team management, operation management. Then I left and I started my own coaching company, and that's where I met Danette, wonderful Danette. And I'm also a lifelong learner. I'm still learning, so I'm doing a Master of Islamic Study at the moment and doing a research, again, very linked to what I call how to help people flourish fully, right? And seeing whether your faith could come in the way of your career advancement, right? So I'm not saying one way or the other. That's my focus. Is there any issue at all, right? And I'm also working with universities, 2 universities, so Torrance University and UTS, University of Technology, Sydney, and running classes as well as programs. So that's about me.
Wow, amazing background there. I think it makes you extremely qualified to talk about the topic you chose, which is an amazing topic. And I think it's so important with people traveling around all over the world now for jobs. I think this is a really important topic. So, Osman, the topic you chose, which is becoming a leader in a new culture and country, which is amazing. And we can't wait to find out about it. Before we get into our questions, though, I did want to ask, how did you choose this topic?
Well, that's my lived experience. And that's what I see a lot of people having to deal with, right? A lot of people, to some extent, I would say everyone has leadership potential, right? How do you unleash that leadership potential is in many ways challenging. It's a challenging puzzle that you have to put together. And it is harder to put that together well in a new culture and country. And I see that as a good problem to solve. And that's how I started, my own company, my coaching practice, to help people to really put that puzzle together and be able to flourish in a new culture and country.
Amazing. Well, I think we've got a lot of great questions, so I think let's jump into it. I'm going to start with
Sure.
Leggers. So Leggers, what is your question, and tell us why you chose it?
So my question for Osman is, what are some of the most common challenges leaders face when transferring to a new culture and country, and how can they better prepare themselves for these challenges?
Great question, Allegra. Are you close to finishing your uni?
Yeah, I'm in my final semester.
Right. So I work a lot with final year student as well. And one of the things that I relate to is, when you finish uni and get into workforce, is a transition, right? What you learn at uni, they're useful, but not everything. There are certain things that you have to unlearn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a great saying from Marshall Goldsmith, who's a good American coach, and some of the listener might have heard this saying from him. It goes like, what got you here won't get you there, right? So you're in final year, whatever got you there, maybe you're finishing with flying colors, who knows? But that may not necessarily get you there in that, at some stage you'll become a leader. Things that you picked up during your uni year may not necessarily be the things that it will propel you into that leadership role, right? So the same things happen when people come from a different culture and different country into a new culture and country. They have to unlearn certain things and learn new things as well. What got them here won't necessarily get you there, right? And typically what I found is in three areas that they find challenges. One is their confidence. If you take driving analogy, if you're driving on a new road, right? So in Burma, we drive on the right-hand side. In Australia, we're on the left-hand side. Did I get it right? Yes, I do. Yeah. So it's different. So when I first started taking driving lessons, when I was driving on the road, when they have the line in the middle, I'm okay, right? But those back streets and little streets, I always veer off to the wrong direction, and then I suddenly lose my confidence. So confidence is one thing. So a lot of people lose confidence. They feel like a guest in someone else's house. And driving on a different road, driving in a different system. And the other is your communication. So a lot of migrants have to deal with language problem, but to me, that's the easiest one to overcome. English is not that hard. I still don't speak with an Aussie accent, but I can get by. I can order. When I got into country, I really used to be scared of going into McDonald's, right? Because those kids at the McDonald's, they speak so fast, I couldn't understand. So, but it's the language is actually easy to overcome, but communication is not. Communications involve a lot more subtlety, right? If you think about leadership, communication in leadership is all about influence, right? So how you influence people in one culture and country is not the same as how you influence people in another culture and another country. So communication is the second thing. The last thing that I would say in terms of common challenges is that when you're in a new country and culture, you don't have this support network. You don't have that social capital that other who grow up in that culture, like the locals, right? So you have an offset there. But at the same time, because of that, when you are in sort of challenging moment, where do you look for support, right? That's a big challenge. When you come back home and sometimes you want to cry, who do you call up? Back in my day, it was really difficult because we don't have WhatsApp and WeChat and Facebook Messenger. So calling back to Burma, it cost an arm and leg. So I could only afford to call twice in a year, and that's when they actually give discount. Telstra give discount, one at the end of financial year, another during Christmas time. So that's when I could afford to actually call back to Burma and have a bit of a cry with my family, right? In some of the things. But you get my point. That support network is not there initially, and that's a big challenge. So that becomes sort of the backbone of my book as well. So those three areas, confidence, communication, and connections, are the common areas that people find very challenging in the beginning, at least.
Wow, that was a great answer. I actually very much look forward to reading the book as well, because I feel like at some point in my career, I would very happily travel overseas for a job. So I feel like it's definitely something that I could look into for sure. So thank you.
You're welcome. And can I quickly say that even though I'm focusing more on culture aspect of this, but this is very much about transition. So going from one phase of your life to another. And as I said, I work with a lot of university students, and I see the same thing as well. as a final year student, you got pretty high confidence. You know the drill now, right? But when you get into the workforce, it's a new environment, a new place. You
Yeah,
might not be
truly.
as confident as you were like as a student, final year student. And the same thing, communication is different. Like the way you communicate in classroom environment, and particularly for leadership setup, the way you communicate in boardroom setup as opposed to classroom is different, right? And the same thing, the connections that you have, your classmates are wonderful, but you got to find new connections to be able to get ahead in the workplace, right? So I see the same things, and to me, it is very much about dealing with managing transition and dealing with differences in culture. And culture doesn't necessarily mean ethnic and race, right? Workplace culture and unique culture, that's a difference as well. So Danette would relate to this. So the book is the first in a series of book. So yeah.
Well, yeah, very excited to read it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for that, Osman. And great question, Leggers. I'm going to throw it to Danette. So, Danette, what was your question? And why'd you choose it?
Thanks, Jez. So my question, Osman, is what are some of the opportunities of becoming a new leader in a new culture and country? And I chose this question because, yeah, I totally agree about the transition things. And sometimes there's opportunities that people aren't really focused on because their brain's a little bit like, I'm changing, things are changing. So I love to balance that out. And I know you've got some opportunities that you would be speaking about normally anyway. So love to hear your answer.
Yeah, so when you say opportunity, Danette, do you mean like how do you get into leadership, that kind of thing, or
So
initiatives that you, yeah.
The opportunities I was thinking, so, when you transition, whatever that is, whether it's to leadership or something else, a lot of people face fears, but on the flip side, there's also there's an opportunity to learn more about yourself or to grow. So I'm just curious, some of the things, and I love your 3C model. That's what I've just named it. So speaking around the opportunities in each of those areas could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I understand now. And so there's plentiful opportunities, right? I in my book, I talked about life or even leadership journey being a series of S curves, right? So again, sorry to pick on the university student on the call, but it's a great sort of resonating situation. That's what I'm picking on you, Lega, is that you're now plateauing out in your final year. In the beginning of university, first year student, quite exciting, quite challenging as well. But then you kind of go through a bit of a learning curve, and then third year, fourth year, you're starting to kind of get the understanding of the system, and probably still get a HD even if you don't go to classes because you know the system, right? But after a while, you kind of plateau out. So that's the trap, right? Sometime in your life, you will get to that top of the S curve and you just don't grow anymore, right? So the opportunity that comes with going into a new culture and country, and by the way, I strongly encourage, please go to other country and learn, new culture, is that opportunity of a new S curve starting off. Yes, in the beginning, it will be difficult, it will be challenging, maybe stressful even, but know that you are actually on a new growth curve, right? So to me, that is the biggest opportunity, is the beginning of a new growth, right? So with that also comes that even though you are different and that brings in challenges, at the same time, having that tension between trying to fit into a new culture while you are standing out actually gives you a lot of opportunities, right? People will see you as a different, but at the same time, they kind of wanting to hear your different perspective, wanting to hear different insight, or maybe even inspiration, right? So that is the opportunity for you to add to that as well. And I was giving acknowledgement of country the other day at a event, and I was talking about that. You know, a lot of people might say we do that to get a tick in the box, but to me as a migrant, it is an opportunity for you to kind of really connect to the land, the culture, and the people, right? And at the same time, have that desire to add something, bring something valuable to these new nations that you are coming into, right? And that's an opportunity. And Australia is evolving multicultural country, and whoever's coming to this country, this new country, this wonderful country, got a lot to bring in and a lot to contribute. And that's the opportunity as well.
What a great answer. I love that. Thank you. Thanks, Osman.
Yeah,
Was
love
a great
that.
question as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I feel like I'm learning so much. I'm gonna go to my question now, which was, what are some tips you'd give to someone who's trying to be a good leader that may want to work in many different countries? I'm just asking this because I know a couple people that part of what they want to do with their career is live in a lot of different countries, and I was just wondering if there's if there's any sort of tips you'd give to them as they sort of explore around the globe.
Yeah, some of my client would know that I love talking in 3 points. You know, that's where 3C comes from. You know, confidence, communication, and connections. But I would summarize my tip to 3 words: be like water. So that comes from the famous movie star Bruce Lee, and a great martial artist as well. And his idea is also rooted in, you know, ancient Chinese wisdom as well. It is about being detached in a way from many things, including, you know, your own culture, in a way they're not dismissing it, but being able to work with other at the same time, right? So be like water wisdom is that in a martial arts sense, being formless. You know, in martial art, you've got karate, you've got jujitsu, you've got judo, right? But the idea from Bruce Lee is that you don't have to stick to one. The essence is the same, right? So if you know the essence, if you know the foundation, if you know the fundamental basic principle, you should be able to adapt to any style, right? So my tips to my client and people who are listening to this podcast is to be able to do that. Know your own value and the value of your own culture and the value of your new culture, and see what's the underlying principle. And I'm sure there's a lot of overlaps. And then build on from those basic principle, be able to adapt to different situations. If you are going into a cup, you become a cup. If you go into a pond, you become a pond. Doesn't matter. You're still water, right? So I think that sums up my tips. But of course, in practical sense, I would be talking about how do you build your confidence in new culture and country? How do you learn how to communicate and influence people, different skill set? And of course, how to build your network and connections.
Amazing. And I think that also kind of, I love that because it sort of builds a little bit also on what you're talking to Danette about, where it's, you know, what you bring is sort of your own interesting thing, but then you can also fit within other contexts as well. So I think that's really cool. I might go to Kanika's question now, which I think has been, it's a good question that's been also used on a different podcast that we're producing for the future. But I think it's a great question. So the question was, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self about becoming a leader?
Are you saying that I'm very old?
I don't know. Are you 25?
Not as old as me, Osman.
Thank you, Danette. That makes me feel better. What advice do I give to my 25 years old self? Two things I would say. One is actually remembering my life experience when I was working as electrical engineer back at Cochlear, which is the one and only company that I ever worked for. And I've got this sort of old man. He's been there for a while. And one day I was working with him in the electrical lab. And we were trying to finish a project, so we stayed back late, right? And then we started talking about, family life and careers as a side chat. And then he said, like, Osman, how long you been here? And I'm like, about 5-6 years. And he's like, move on. He's a adult migrant, and he's got limited English, so he's speaking those short, sharp, direct sentences. Move on. I'm like, no, I love Cochlear. I love people. I love you. Like everyone's great. And he's like, Osman, do you want to become a team leader, a manager? I said, yeah, of course, someday I would. Then he said it again. Move out. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, think about this. If you want to climb up, which is easier, to climb up straight up ladder or straight up road, or if you go zigzag? And it's just like, oh yeah, it may take a bit longer, but actually move faster. And it's really harder to climb up a straight up ladder or a straight up road. And that's why if you want to climb a mountain, you don't, build your road like straight up, right? You have to go like winding road, and that's where the civil engineering come in. You never build like that. So that's a great analogy. So my the advice that I would give myself to is linking back to that S-curve analogy. Know your growth journey, understand where you would be plateauing out, and kick off, and know where you have to pivot, right? So he doesn't use these fancy words. Now, he just say move out, right? So I'll say the same thing. Find the right time to move on, right? So that would be one advice. The other is very, very much relating to that is, as engineers, so this is not even just culture, right? As an engineers, we tend to focus more on the task, and we think that the result that we produce will speak for itself, right? If you do a good job, you get promoted. Simple equation. Why not? Right? It's not like marketing or even leadership, if you want. It's not soft. Like engineering is very black and white. Have you got the thing done or not? Right? So we focus on the task, and we say the result will speak for itself. And I think that may be true in technical sort of space, in individual contributor level. But certainly, if you want to get into leadership, the result will not speak for itself. And you need two things. One is the opportunity to get the right task to be able to add to your career and get ahead. And the second is visibility. You need to be able to talk to the right people at the right time, in the right way, about the right thing. Not all projects are the same, right? So to sum it up in a few words, that's about self-promotion. You also need to do self-promotion. I did not do that, and I suffer from that. So those are the two things that I would say. Pivot at the right time, and do care about self-promotion, which is not growing ahead and blowing your own trumpet. It is about talking to the right people at the right time about the right thing in the right way.
Yeah, well, I like that. I love that idea of self-promotion. And another interesting theme that I've started to notice through some of these answers is that this S imagery, almost like we've got the S curve, we've got the winding road, which is also kind of S-shaped, and water when it runs in a river is also kind of S and bending shape. So I'm noticing an interesting pattern there. It's good. I like
nice.
it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, Jess. That's cool.
Let's jump into Alan's question, which is, what were some pleasant surprises you found about being a leader in a new culture?
Ooh. Let me think. There's a lot of stress associated with leadership, I'll tell you that. But there are pleasant surprises as well. And I think that's not just leadership. In general, I think Australian culture and leadership culture in Australia is a subset of that as well, right? So I think one thing that I value a lot and I love a lot and appreciate a lot is the freedom that we have. The freedom in a sense that the freedom of expression and the freedom to choose what you like. And Danette will know this phrase very well, to be able to do the work that you love with the people that you like and get rewarded for that is a blessing. And you can do that in Australia, right? And you can do that even more so if you're in leadership position. You have that freedom and influence to choose the work that you like and the people that you love and get rewarded for that. So I think the impact and influence, and in some way, freedom, yes, you have more responsibility, but the freedom that you have as a leader, I didn't quite appreciate that because I wasn't there. And I would answer the question by saying that that was a nice, pleasant surprise for me that, well, even though leadership is stressful and have big responsibility, you also have the freedom and have the opportunity to make positive impact by influencing people in the right way. So that's a nice, pleasant surprise.
I think that's great. And I think that's a great lesson for people that might be stepping into leadership roles, is understanding, you know, that you also have such a ability to create such a positive outcome for other people by doing that. So that's great. Thanks, Osman. I think this last question we've got from Marg is a really good one. And I think it was also something I was thinking when this topic came up, which was outside of work, what keeps you grounded as a leader in a new culture and country? Because, I mean, obviously that can be a little tricky. You can feel a little displaced sometimes. So what's a good way to keep yourself kind of grounded?
I'd said something that I really appreciate about Australian culture is the freedom that we have here, particularly the freedom of expression. The other thing that I really loved about Australian culture is the mateship that we have. You know, we call everyone's mate. You know, talking about culture, even to an extent that, you know, in most Asian culture, we have to be like, there's a power difference in many, you know, part of society, including workplace. So you can't call your boss by name, right? That's just not a thing. And you can't call your dad by name, and you can't, to an extent, maybe newer generations probably has a different thing, but certainly in my generation, I can't be like a friend, a mate with my dad. You know, there's a different dynamics there, and definitely I can't call him by his first name. I get a smack on my back. You know, that's just the thing. You know, so. How do I ground it? But having said all of that, it goes back to one of the C's in my 3C, which is connections. You know, support network is really important. And I love Australian culture for that as well, that mateship that we have. You know, we all are very friendly, regardless of different color of skin or a different culture or even different religion. You know, I'm of Islamic faith, but that doesn't come in the way, right? In most settings. So how do you ground yourself outside of work is to have that mateship, to have that support network, and to have that meaningful connections. And the other thing that I also add to this is that, you know, in your career, talking about S-curve again, Jess, is that particularly when you go in that deep, the slow period, the stressful period, having good network and connection supported network, which includes not just your family, but also your mentor, sponsor, and coaches as well, will really help you. That's where you ground. So sometimes you might have a tough day, bad day at work or even uni, having someone like Danette to come back and, let the steam out, talk with them. And, at work, you might have that sort of moment, and being able to call on your mate, your mentor, your coach, and having a good discussion with them for even 20 minutes, 30 minutes will help you a lot and will ground you again and be able to realize what you actually value, not just those moments that you were in. There is a brighter future just coming ahead. They will give you that perspective.
I think that's a great lesson and a great final takeaway from our questions here. Now, before we wrap up, though, I do want to grab some final thoughts from everybody. So I might start with you, Danette. Did you have any final thoughts on becoming a leader in a new country or today's conversation?
So the first one relates to the S curve, that Osman, that S, that OS, that needs to be a bit bigger in your thing. I'm just thinking that is Jez's thing about that was amazing. And I love how you related that the S curve to the different changes and transitions in our life, and thinking about the key elements of what's so important to make those transitions as smooth as they possibly can, and to continue that growth. So totally loved this conversation. We will definitely have you back. Plus, I'm definitely going to invite you on the other podcast that Jez was talking about, which is my Adapt with Danette FM one, which is coming out soon. Hey, Jez.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for that one. And Osman, stay tuned for being in the next season of that. That's very exciting. We'll have you on for that one. Legers, any final thoughts on today's conversation or becoming a leader in a new culture and country?
Well, I thought there was a lot of really interesting points there that I guess I hadn't really consciously considered, but I do think, like, especially your 3 C's, and also I agree with everyone, the S sort of model, because I'm quite a visual thinker and learner. I feel like that's been like quite a nice visualization for sort of your metaphor. But yeah, I am sort of coming to the peak of, this period of my life. So it does definitely apply to me as I try and go job hunting and get a foothold in the, industry that I want to be in, and, all of that sort of stuff. So definitely thinking about all of the things that you said today would be very helpful for me in that period. So yeah, I just want to say great conversation, and I learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, some other stuff that I took away as well, even beyond kind of the S curve, which I think was really important. It makes a lot of things in my life make a lot of sense, even just thinking of the S curve and how that's a growth thing, and then you do plateau at a certain point. That makes a lot of sense for me, certainly at the moment. So I've really enjoyed that. But so 2 other kind of key takeaways for me was the concept of self-promotion. I thought that was really good. It's something that I definitely am going to apply going forward. I like that idea. And then the other one was just the power of mates and how useful they are to me, also is a really big takeaway. But before we wrap up, Osman, any final thoughts that you had on today's conversation or becoming a leader in a new culture and country?
Yeah, as you were saying, Jez, as you start talking about these things, you kind of start to see the pattern in the conversation, and I relate that to what I do with my clients who come from a different culture and country, which is that in all of this, yeah, be like water is a great thing that we can do, but at the same time, you also have to find the common ground. Right? Without a common ground, you can't connect. Diversity is good, but not in and of itself. You need to make sure that diversity has a common theme as well, right? So there's a nice phrase also that says diversity in unity, right? So it has to come to something meaningful, all of these together. And that to me is that pattern that runs underneath, that common ground. So we all have to kind of bolt onto that common ground, and that will give something that is meaningful, as if we were building a house, and every different part of that house are different, and we need different parts to put a beautiful house together. But guess what? We need the foundation, the common ground. So what is that common ground? And those people who are able to get ahead in their career in the new culture and country are the ones who are able to find that common ground and be able to build on that. Right. So that would be my final thoughts. So if anything that you want to take away also is to be able to find a common ground with people and be able to connect with them and be able to communicate with them in a way that is mutually beneficial and have that confidence in yourself. We all are unique people and we all are great. And we can do something together beautifully.
Yeah, I love that thought there, Osman. Before we go though, I've loved the whole conversation. I've taken away so much from, but for people that may want to reach out to you and contact you after listening to this and sort of reach out, where's the best place for them to get in contact?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I usually post one or two valuable stuff, hopefully, for people who follow me. So please follow me on LinkedIn. Don't think that's that many Osman Mah. So if you just type in Osman Mah, OSMANMAH, you'll find me there. And looking forward to connecting.
That's exactly right. Well,
Yeah.
the link will be in the podcast description, so you can just jump straight there, and that'll take you straight to Osman's page. You can get in contact there. Osman, I want to thank you so much for being a great guest today. This has been such a good conversation. To Allegra and Danette, great questions and great insights there. And to everybody listening at home that's been sharing and listening to this podcast and enjoying it, have a magical week.